Good morning, Gail. Oh, it's so lovely to see your face. How are you doing
Oh,
today?
I'm good, thank you. It's lovely to see you.
And thank you for coming on as my very first guest for the
Very
Deep
honored to.
Feelers and Big Hearted People Pleasers.
Mhm.
This is very exciting to me. And would you like to introduce yourself before I get all sycophantic about how wonderful you are? Do you want to tell people
Oh,
who you are and what you do?
my name's Gail Doggett. I'm a writer and a book coach, and I'm late diagnosed neurodivergent, like most of the best people are, frankly. And that's mainly who I work with. I work with women who have the thing of, oh, everyone's got a book in them. There are lots of women, I think, who, for various reasons, have not made time for themselves or their writing. And I work with people like that to try and give them some time and some space and get the books out of them.
Amazing. Squeeze it out of them.
Yeah,
Like
like a tube of toothpaste, out it comes.
Brilliant. Well, you squeezed one out of me, so to speak.
Well, I think you've done a pretty good job of, I mean, I said to you at the time that, what I read. I loved your proposal and was like, I need this book in my hands right now and I need to give it to lots of people. Um, and when you showed me what you'd written, it was so good and it was so clear. And then the one thing that I hope you
Mm.
don't mind me saying this, but the one thing that I said was, I think it needs more Alice. And
Oh
you
yeah,
said,
I don't mind you saying.
yeah, you were like, that's what I haven't done yet, is I haven't really,
Yeah,
put my particular spin on it. And, the idea as a concept was so solid and so brilliant, but it was like, and now it needs to be Aliced,
yeah,
which is clearly what you did. And I love the fact that you're now going through your edits without, losing your mind, basically, which is
yeah,
cool.
yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's that what you gave to me, what I was really seeking, and I think I said this was so by the way, Gail, I've written my first book and I met Gail through another mutual thing that we attend, and it was just amazing. Well, it was through Ray Dodd, actually. Shout out to Ray,
Love Ray.
who's a great coach. And yeah, I was struggling with that meanness, that permission. It's like, yeah, I'm writing that book. Like when you do something big, particularly when maybe your beliefs haven't caught up with you,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I can do this as an exercise. I can write this because I have the knowledge and I can download it. But in terms of my beliefs catching up with like, this is really happening, like I can really do this. Somebody like me can actually write a book. Like that
Yeah.
was totally such a mind-blowing thing. And I think, yeah, when I had sort of written the main bulk of it, then it became a bit of an issue, that belief that actually, does this sound okay? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Um, and of course, like when you write a book and you get the proposal accepted, which in itself is mind blowing, you are pretty much left to it. So you
Yes.
kind of don't not getting feedback, and that's exactly what you gave me. You gave me that. I mean, reassurance in like a really positive way. You weren't like fawning and saying, "Oh, that's wonderful." You gave real, warm, supportive, useful feedback, and that was just such a lovely thing to have had, and really boosted my confidence handing that in. So everyone at JKP knows about you now, hopefully, because
Yay.
I've said numerous times about you and you helping me. So
I
yeah.
think it's one of the biggest issues actually within publishing. And I used to work as a commissioning editor many moons ago. And I'm sure I didn't realize this at the time. But I've also seen people talk about it, on Substack and other places, particularly people who are on both sides of the fence, so they're the poacher and the gamekeeper. So they're editors, but they're also writers, and they don't realize until they get into the position of being an author what it feels like and how lonely it can be sometimes as well. So people can find their, kind of writing village, through, co-writing or, real life stuff, events, organizations like the Romantic Novelists Association, for example, are brilliant to bring people together. Um, but you kind of, you hear about the book deal and you hear about, selling your book and that's great. But we talked about this quite a bit, and it sounds, I think, a bit like what you experienced, is that you sell the proposal, you're really excited, this is a huge milestone, and then it's tumbleweeds, and you don't hear from anybody for ages because until you hit the production schedule, if you're in, really a publishing house of any size, they're
Mm.
doing so many books that they have, very big spreadsheets. And it's like until that game, the kids game Downfall with the things you twirl around, words.
I mean, is it
Um,
like Kaplunk?
yeah, it was, you'd have to move counters down through the whole board by sort of turning dials that would catch counter and bring it down. And it's a little bit
Oh,
like,
check that
and
out.
it's called Downfall, ironically. But it's kind of that way with the publishing machine until you fall into that basket to get carried down. In some ways, it's like you don't exist. And then all of a sudden, you'll get all this flurry of communication going, hi, we need your blurb and your bio and this and sales stuff. And have you got any articles we can pitch? And, you suddenly are on their radar in a quite
Yeah.
exposing way. And I think that's quite hard for anybody, but particularly for neurodivergent people, when you get this huge rush of dopamine.
Mm.
I've done this amazing thing. I've sold my book. Here we go. And then crickets. And then suddenly you're back on again, on, off, on, off. And, with things like rejection sensitivity, you sort of feel like, did they make a mistake? Did they not
Yeah.
mean it? And these things I think are very hard to say
Mm.
out loud, to even to writer friends, even to people who know what this feels like. And the last people you want to tell are your agent, if you have one, and your editor, because
Mhm.
I've seen people sort of go like it makes me look unprofessional, or even if you don't think that, a lot of people I think feel it's like they're showing they're ungrateful or something,
Mm.
if they're asking questions. And yes, all of the publishing professionals are really busy people, of course they are, um, but it's still a hard thing as a person to separate yourself from your baby, your idea, this thing, and suddenly go, oh, now it's a product.
Yeah.
Because now it's entered, and that kind of is what happens, but now it has entered into the realms of being a product that somebody has bought. It's a widget, it's going along the conveyor belt, and you're like,
Yeah.
but it's my widget, it's my baby.
Yeah.
um and I think that's really tough, and that's one of the things that I like being able to do
Mm.
for writers, is to go, just give it to me. I'll hold
Yeah.
all that stuff for you for a
Yeah.
while. um because it's very natural to feel all of that, but it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, or you're
Mm.
going to screw this up in any way. It's just, it's really hard, I think, to suddenly be cut off and then on, off, on, off. And
Yeah.
I think editorial staff increasingly do understand this. That doesn't mean they have a lot of bandwidth either to help you, because they're dealing with the people that have just come onto their radar.
Yeah.
They're dealing with those books that are publishing in whatever part of the cycle, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And then next month, it'll be a whole different crop of people. So I feel for people on both sides of the divide, basically. But I also understand how it can feel really hard for somebody to, you don't want to say to your editor, you're ignoring me. Um, even if it
Yeah.
feels like they are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I just, I love again hearing that validation too. And when you brought up about the rejection sensitivity, because I 100% just felt that. I felt like, oh God, like, did they make it up? Like they don't want me to do it.
Yeah.
And I went ahead of my deadline because it was too long for me. It was just too far away. And so I discussed bringing it forward. And then I got it in even before that. And even that, I could, what I was telling myself, like, oh, you're getting it early, that must mean it's no good. Like, you haven't done a good job. Like, you must have missed something. Because, I mean, I guess, it's that getting into a flow state and doing something you really love. Actually, you can hyper focus on that and really get a
Yes.
lot more done than you realize. And I think, again, that's the other side of being a neurodivergent writer, is that maybe those deadlines and boundaries that maybe publishers would think of as being reasonable or realistic. And I guess it could go either way, right? It's either, you might be early or you might be very much over
Yep.
time. But
Yeah.
I mean, I feel very thankful that Sean at JKP, he sort of handles all the neurodivergent
Yeah.
pitches that come in submission. So like obviously I felt like he handled that really well.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything anybody could have done to stop me feeling that, giving me
Yeah.
the amount of reassurance. It was like literally getting down and writing it, but having you there, like holding my hand there at the end. And I wish I'd have discovered you earlier, because I think I could have got over myself a lot quicker and really tackled some of those beliefs that I was sitting with, that meant I did do a lot of rumination on it in terms of getting started, and I had to really do a lot of work and my self-belief just to get me to start doing it.
Yeah.
And having somebody like you like that, just it changed things. It meant that momentum that I was really struggling with and really quite fearful, and do you know what, even felt quite some shame about what I was handing in, because that's quite a go-to emotion for me. So you were able
But
to
it was great, and it was, it was such a clear proposal. And I remember talking about how quickly you'd written it, and the fact that you were submitting early, which I thought was a great idea, because there is some empowerment as well in saying, okay, I'm going to make my own schedule for it, as long as, the editor understands. And I think I did say to you that even submitting it early, there was a possibility that you wouldn't hear anything back about it.
And I didn't for a while. Yeah, because I didn't have it in the schedule, obviously.
Exactly. But better, I think, to do it that way than to let the anxiety and the fear build up, because that can then stop you from actually finishing the book. And then that is more problematic, really.
Yeah.
If you're submitting early, surprising for a publisher. Submitting late, that's usually an issue, because again, there's something missing on the conveyor belt, and what are they going to do? And it may be that, I know for an awful lot of neurodivergent writers, you need something to motivate you. So you've got some kind of gamification or novelty or urgency. And a deadline is one of those things that often does motivate people. But, I see people who sign a book deal, they've got a delivery date that is, a year out maybe, or 12 months out. And suddenly 11 months from, signing, they're like, oh, I've got a book. I've got a book to do. I've got a month. And it turns into this massive sprint to the end, because you've mustered enough dopamine to actually, start working. But that's not terribly healthy, in terms of resourcing yourself and just surviving the process. It just means everything's a bit more rushed. You're second guessing yourself a bit more, I think, for most people.
Yeah.
And then one thing I've seen, with myself, with other people, I think it's often when you complete a project and you hand something in, you're not feeling the sense of achievement and accomplishment that you should be feeling, because what you're actually feeling is a full sort of somatic collapse and relief that it's over, as opposed to, a measure of pride and accomplishment, and giving yourself that pat on the back that you deserve for doing something that's really hard. And it would be, very difficult for most people, but you're doing it with, added challenges around, executive function and time management. And to not celebrate that, I think, is really, really sad, actually. And you should be able to feel like, I did that, ta-da, as opposed to, oh, I'm falling apart. And also, I've seen it so many times. I don't know if you've gone through this too, where, you do that, you push yourself physically and mentally, and then invariably you get sick afterwards.
Oh God, yeah.
So it's a double whammy, whereas
Yeah.
if you can do what you did, which I just thought was great, you're getting that in early, and then that frees you up to do other things. And whether that's totally whimsical, frivolous things that are, rejuvenating and resting your system, or you want to start working on something else. Because I see a lot as well that doing work like this and getting into flow is really generative for people. And suddenly they're like, I have an idea for 3 more books.
Oh gosh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and that's great because what a publisher wants to see is they don't want somebody who, well, depending on the person and the idea, they
Yeah.
might want a single person with a single idea. And I think that's often where celeb books come from. Um, but really,
Yeah.
what they want is to work with people who have ideas, are creative, are
Mm.
able to do the work, ideally can do it in a timely manner, but who want to keep doing this and they want to keep working together and they want to form relationships with people where, it's a good working partnership and you can keep working together successfully. Especially when it's a debut, there's a certain amount of work to do to bring a debut to the market, obviously, but they
Yeah.
do love a debut.
Yeah.
But then they're always going to say to you, whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, invariably, an editor or an agent that you're talking to about, representation or a sale, they will pretty much always say, because they're only talking to you because they're excited about what they've seen. And that's great. And you're all on the same page and you're talking about, this brilliant book that you've written, this idea you've come up with, this proposal you've got. Pretty much always in the conversation, the next question is going to be, what else are you working on? Because the way things work, you've probably already done the bulk of the work on that book.
Yeah. Yeah.
With nonfiction, it's slightly different. You've probably done a really big proposal. But with fiction, especially for a first sale, usually you've written the whole thing. And then they're like, and what's next? Um, which is really exciting because hopefully you will have generated more ideas. The other thing that happens as well, I think that can be kind of overwhelming for people, which again is one of those things I think people don't talk about a whole lot before you go into publishing, is you'll start off with book A, standalone book, nonfiction book, for example.
Yeah.
And then they're like, great, this is great. We're going to buy it. You're going to write it. It's going to be fantastic. You write it, you submit it. They're like, that's great. What about book 2? And you're like, well, I have an idea. So you start working on book 2 and you're excited. You're doing the manuscript. And then they're like, great, now we have your edits for book 1.
Yeah.
So they send you
Oh,
back
yeah.
the book. You're like, I've done that. Why is it coming
Yeah.
back to me? Again, can be tricky for neurodivergent people. I like to say to people that it's like solving a puzzle, or having a scientific proof of idea. It's like, this is proving my idea,
Mm.
because otherwise it can feel like you're just treading the same thing over again.
Yeah.
It's dull, and we don't do dull. But you're then working on, so you've got book 1 has come back to you. It'll normally come back to you as edits from the editor, which could be, a structural edit. Then it'll go to a line edit, which is, the nitty gritty. Then it usually goes to a copy editor who's going to be doing fact checking and making sure that, you haven't said, the word somatic 77 times or whatever. You know, they'll check all of that. You'll have to read it really carefully. It'll be extremely sort of minutiae stuff that you're like, I don't care anymore. While you're still working on book 2. Then it will come back after the copy editor. Usually you'll see like a final typeset version, which is the point where you'll suddenly get a great idea for an extra chapter and they'll go, no, because that will cost us more money. And you say, fine, I'll make that into book 3, book
Yeah.
C, whatever. But at the same time, you're involved in book 2 and you're trying to write that because you're into the machine. You are now part of, those books that are on the conveyor belt, falling down and downfall. You're those widgets, you're those counters. So you're suddenly in a situation where you're doing 2 books all the time. And also you're normally expected to write the second book. They do like to do a book a year quite often. Your first book, again, especially for fiction, I mean, you might have taken a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years to write it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they're like, and where's the manuscript for the next one? And another thing that people, don't often realize is the way you're paid often. If you're on a contract involving royalties, most people are aware of what an advance is. An advance is money you get up front, which is an advance part of your future sales.
Yeah.
So they say to you, okay, we're going to give you £1,000, £10,000, £100,000, because they think you're going to sell so many copies of the book that they'd eventually be giving you that money anyway. So they give you a chunk of it up front. But that chunk is split into three parts normally in publishing. It's split into you get a payment on signature, a payment on delivery, and a payment on publication. So again, you've got all these stages to go through with every book, and that is um, it can affect, how you're being paid. If you've spent an awful lot of time in the first book, it works out to be very, very little per hour. We never calculate that because that would be
Exactly.
depressing. But then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're into this sort of, in
Yeah.
order to get paid, I need to get the signature payment or the delivery payment, again, 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 again.
Yeah.
It's all these sort of systems that you enter
Yeah.
that you may not be aware of beforehand
Yeah.
that can feel quite oppressive,
Yeah,
basically.
no, absolutely. And if you've not done it before, like I didn't get an advance for this book. And just to say, to anyone considering writing a book who's thinking, oh God, I can't do that, or you need XYZ to do it. I mean, that was definitely a factor in me wanting to get it in as well, is because I'm not getting paid to write this at this point.
Yeah.
And I want to get it out there because then I want to work on my next book. It's literally like the floodgates opened, because
Yes.
it's something I had wanted to do when I was very young. I wanted to write, and I didn't feel at that time confident enough to do it. I
Yeah.
ended up, I used to be a correspondent for my newspaper, the local newspaper, and I did that for a bit. And then I did a bit of writing here and there. And I ended up going to nursing because I'd been a young carer. I did work experience in a hospital. I'd been offered like some writing experience at a newspaper, but I just did not have the self-belief, because from the
Yeah.
family I was from, people did not, you had a trade. You either went into the shipyard or you became an engineer, or I mean, yeah, I became a nurse, and it
Yeah.
was not expected or even opened up to me, even though I did do A levels and I was, being encouraged to apply for university by teachers. I did not, that just did not fit. I just thought, well, that isn't for me. I've got to get a job. I've got to get, something that I'm going to be able to resource myself. And so for me, like, obviously I'll be 52 when the book is finally published next September. And also they brought the date forward. So it was going to be winter
Oh,
next year, but it's now going to be autumn. So it's a long process, isn't
yeah.
it? But also, that's a big deal. And I really dived into how many female writers were getting published, later in life. And it,
Mm.
it just gave me such hope. And it was suddenly the light bulb switched on, and I thought, oh God, I could do this too. And it wasn't because, I do see people, maybe lots of people on Instagram with lots of followers. Like, I've had a massive growth this year, and that was intentional after getting getting the book deal. It wasn't because I've had growth. And I've seen people quote this that have worked with me, and they said, oh, and then she got a book deal. I got that book deal way before any growth on
Yeah.
Instagram. That was me going, what if I could? What if I could submit a proposal and get it accepted? Like, wouldn't that be great to be able to write? Because I felt I had to. I felt this urge to
Yes.
download this material. It wasn't because they looked at my socials and thought, oh yeah, let's contact her. We want her to write a book. So you don't have to have, I just want to say, like, you do not have to have any kind of like presence, following, whatever. You've just got to love writing and believe that you can do it.
Yes.
And obviously, you might end up being in the slush pile of some publishers. I was very intentional in choosing who I would send this proposal to, and I only sent it to JKP, and that was it, because I knew
Yeah.
that they had a strong track record of publishing within that field. And again, like, yeah, it was that sort of fallow period, and then I decided, well, actually, if I'm going to sell this book that I'm not getting paid to write at the moment, I'm going to be solely relying on commission payments.
Mm.
I need to have an audience to sell to, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I got very intentional about growing my audience. I mean, obviously the kind of the side effects of that have been like creating, I feel like, a lovely community that I love interacting with my followers. I manage it myself. Like, I love speaking to people when I can. Sometimes it is very overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I want it to be a relational connection. I don't, it wasn't like, oh, let's just get loads of followers and then sell the book to them. Like, I've loved building that community. It's been so, so important to me. And I think and then I see like people who've got mega followers and they've have like sponsorship deals and stuff like that. And then it's like, oh, now, and I've written a book. And I think that maybe sometimes for people, it feels like that can only happen if you're in that position. And absolutely not. Like,
Nope.
it's not.
Nope. It's not. I think the social media one's really interesting. I think there can be a perception that if you have a big social media following, then therefore everybody will buy that book.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
And also, if you are going to be published, that you have to have a big following. So, don't go to a publisher before you have one. I'm not entirely convinced that's true. There's a woman called Nicola Washington.
Oh, yeah. I love her stuff.
She's brilliant.
Yeah.
And anybody who is writing, who wants to promote themselves as an author on Instagram, you need to go and follow Nicola.
Yeah. She's great.
She's really, really good. I think, yes, I mean, it's great if you do have an audience and you are, putting your work out there, putting your baby out there. And yes, you are the person who's the expert, right? So you can talk with the most authority about your book.
Yeah.
So yes, talk to people on socials. And it's great when you know you're making connections with people. But that's what it's about. It's about the connections and the real engagement. If you got loads of followers, but there's no conversations happening, that's very draining because you're like, why am I shouting into the void all the time?
Yeah.
And it doesn't bring connection and it doesn't give you any of that kind of community vitamin that you need. And it doesn't really let your work breathe, I don't think. If you don't feel like it's going to people who might be receptive, if it's just going to, people who might as well be bots, then kind of what's the point?
Yeah.
And for me, if I'm doing something like that, it starts to feel plastic and inauthentic. And I don't want to do it anymore because I'm like, well, why am I bothering to do this? Because it's not, I'd sooner have a couple of real conversations with a couple of people than have a whole load of people that don't interact but just follow me.
Exactly.
But I think it's really interesting that publishers often do think that somebody who has a big following will have a successful book, and it's not always the case. But one of the other things about publishing that I think is kind of interesting is it's a little bit like with movies, where you can have two films that have really similar pitches. You can have two books that have really similar pitches. And there's really no rhyme or reason as to which one is going to take off and be wildly successful. That's going to have loads of word of mouth publicity and people talking it up and booksellers, talking it up, or, cinema reviewers saying this is, amazing. And then the other one falls flat like a pancake when it's got just as much going for it on paper. If there was a magic formula, publishers would be exploiting it, but there isn't, and they don't know what it is, which is why they still read the slush pile. Point. And like when you send something unsolicited, unsolicited means they didn't ask for it, which means, it's going into a general pile in an agency. It's sometimes being read by, the interns, but the interns are people with very good senses who are like, oh, somebody else should read this. And they do pass stuff on. People do get picked up and found that way. Again, for neurodivergent people, tricky to be just, sending. I think it's quite exposing anyway to send stuff up. But when you hear it's going into the slush pile and it's unsolicited, it's like, okay, that's making me feel very unwelcome, rejection sensitivity again.
Yeah.
I think that's tricky. But with socials, the benefit, I think, is in the connection. Yes, with something like Substack, which I think is great, you're getting to share your ideas and your voice and how you write. But just be mindful with social that people tend to curate it very heavily. They put the good stories out there. People talk about when they get the deal. I think actually Substack is quite good for this. I think a lot of people talk about writing practice and process. And how it, can be enriching or draining or just has to be part of your life in some way. As much as they talk, I think Instagram is worse for like shiny new thing. Look what I did. Um, and that again is not
Yeah,
necessarily a complete picture. And I think that's tricky for
so true.
everybody. But again, rejection for neurodivergent people.
Yeah, that is so, so true. And I think even just getting your beliefs in order, as it were, like I very much felt in January, like, well, what I had this turning 50 and lost a very close friend. And it was very much like, well, what do I have to lose? Like, let's just experiment, let's just see. And if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. I'll send it to someone else or I'll publish it myself. Like I
Mm.
work with quite a lot of authors in my therapy and coaching practice. And I think hearing stories also really inspired me. But yeah, in terms of like again, it's a series of beliefs and getting out, working them out, So I was like, well, if I don't do it now, then when? When am I going to do it? Like let's just give it a try. So I held
Yeah.
it quite lightly.
Mm.
Of course, if that had come back as a no, then I would have had some rejection sensitivity deal with 100%. I would have. Um, but I wonder if it would have been less than if I hadn't sort of prepared myself. I like wanted to get myself. I don't really believe that getting your ducks in a row like that. Like we can never fully
Ugh.
do that, but it was beliefs, it was working out actually how am I going to feel if this doesn't happen. Well, there's these avenues and these avenues. I could see the fire escape. I could see like what I was
Yeah.
going to do if that didn't happen. um what I want to ask you, if it's okay, like talking about neurodivergence,
Mm.
is there a belief like that you've held about yourself that turned out to not be true? Like I had this belief about that people who wrote had to come from like really rich families or that had to be like Cambridge graduates. So I definitely had some sort of inverted snobbery coming from a very working class background, that only certain types of people, that was a belief. Has there been a belief that you've noticed like that has
Oh yeah.
really turned
There's
out to be
there's
not
been a big
true?
one. Um, well, one that I had, um, one that I'd given to me.
Yeah.
Somebody told me when I was really young, and I still can't quite remember who it was. I've got a suspicion. And it wasn't somebody in my family, I know that.
Yeah.
But somebody said to me when I was quite young, nobody likes a show off.
Oh, yeah.
And this stayed with me for, I mean, still working through that one,
Mm,
50 years on. Um,
mm,
and it was only like after being diagnosed with ADHD and reading around it, I realized that what they perceived as being a show off
mm,
was I wasn't even extroverted. People say, oh, she's very extroverted. I wasn't extroverted. I was impulsive. I
yeah.
had no control of my impulsivity. So, if
Yeah.
my mother loves to tell me about how when I would very, very occasionally go to church when I was a small child, the minister would start off with a rhetorical question about, has anyone been to the seaside? And I'd be like, yes. And I would just answer him because I thought he wanted to be answered. But at the same time, while doing that, I would be going, "Ooh, I wish he wasn't talking, with that stomach churning
Oh God, yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so impulsivity drove a lot of my behavior when I was younger, and it certainly led me to speak up in certain or speak out in certain situations. But somebody telling me that that was a bad thing, nobody likes a show off. There's a lot to unpack in that sentence.
Yeah.
Um, so it made me think, okay, well, if I say anything, if I show up, if I, want to participate in things, I'm being a show off and nobody likes me. Um, and it just stayed with me for so many years in terms of doing the work, doing the writing work, um, wanting to show it to anyone else, never mind thinking about getting stuff published.
Yeah.
And actually made things very narrow for me because it shrank that window of opportunity to even get to the page to start writing. Because it's like, well, why are you doing that? You're showing off. You know, nobody wants to listen to you. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
hear from you.
Yeah.
And it's been really debilitating. And,
Mm.
it brings up rejection sensitivity. Um, it criticizes the impulsivity. But it has actually until very recently, it has mangled my executive function around being able to get myself to write. And literally the other night, I was doing some work, doing something, and just suddenly had this sort of thought, shoot in out of the blue. And it was like, but you love to write. Why are you stopping yourself from doing it?
Mm.
I was like, oh yeah. Yeah. There's all the other things around. What are you going to do with it? Will you show it to anybody? Will it ever see the light of day? It doesn't matter. Like, even if writing is only ever a hobby for me, it's not even about self-expression. It's just the fact that
Yeah.
the act of disappearing into imaginary worlds that I've cooked up,
Mhm.
or writing on Substack, because I my Substack kind of has been very quiet, and it is going to have some more posts coming out, because I really got to this thing of like, well, who wants to hear from me? Why do I think I need a newsletter? It's a really debilitating thing. And then I thought back to the glory days of approximately 2009, when blogging was a thing. Um, and I met so many friends and, people who are still friends through blogging, particularly food blogging. Um, and I let it go like a lot of other things when I became a parent. Um, because for whatever reasons, again, probably the fear of being perceived,
Yeah.
which again, is a big thing for a lot of us. I made a decision I didn't want to put my kids on there.
Yeah.
And my life was all my kids at the time. As soon as I became a mum, it was, a difficult
Yeah.
birth, and it was
Mm.
very all-encompassing, and which it is for everybody anyway, uh, even if you're experienced with kids, when you become a mum, or a dad, it changes just everything, because suddenly there's another person to factor into everything, who comes way further up the priority list, as far as I'm concerned, than everything else. Um, but also, and all the hormones and all that stuff. Um, but I was undiagnosed at the time, and I've seen this again play out with a lot of people, where all of your executive functioning goes to your kids. Also, the
Sure.
show off thing did still show up in that I was like, I don't want to like embarrass my kids. I don't want anything I do to I think I was thinking of them being slightly older. Like, I don't want it to impact on them, that people are like, oh, we don't want, to hang out with that kid because the mother's just insufferable. Ironically, I'm over all that now. And I
That's good.
kind of think, like, to an extent, it is my mission to embarrass my children. Um, I do it sparingly. But masking is
Yeah.
a terrible thing. And somebody saying to me at that young age, nobody likes to show off, led to a
Yeah.
lifetime of masking.
Yeah.
And it is so damaging, and it's hard to unpick,
Yeah.
but it is actually probably the greatest gift you'll ever give yourself, is to just go, you know what? I need to do whatever it is that I would normally do.
Yeah.
I need to show up as myself. I need to unpick all these things that I've put in place to hide myself or make myself less. It's a thing. If I'm too much for you, go find somebody else.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because, like you said, that and I'm sure you heard that more than once, because we often hear things on repeat. Or, I mean, sometimes we
Yeah,
only have to hear it once, but it only takes once, twice, or hearing it being said about other people. Oh, look at them, they're a show off. And this is
yeah,
how we absorb that, and then we think, okay, well, it's not safe to do that, so I'm going to have to shrink or stop doing that, like you say. And that's where the masking really kind of kicks off. And
yeah,
then it becomes, I guess that way of being that we felt was keeping us safe for all that time actually turns against us, and really gets in the way of us achieving, that
yeah,
shrinking, that masking really gets in the way of us being able to do the things that we want to do, that bring us joy, that kind of help us
yeah,
feel fulfilled. And um yeah, that's when those beliefs, we have to turn them on their head, don't they, and say, well, come on, well, what's the evidence that is showing off? Like, look, that person's doing it and that person's doing it.
yeah,
And actually, when I do the thing that I think maybe is showing off, I feel really good, and it makes me feel really whole. um
yes.
we're not here to apologize for ourselves, are we? You're like, we're not here to suffer, and we're not here to apologize for ourselves. I thank you for sharing that. That's so, I'm sure like lots of people will resonate with that. We've come up with a whole book, couldn't we, of things that have said, you know,
Yeah.
said that are really deep, really like hurdles to kind of fulfilling, you know, our desires. If it's okay, I'd just like to ask you one more thing, because I know like we've gone
We could
slightly
talk
over.
forever.
We could literally talk. I think there's
Yeah.
going to have to be a few of these. I'd just love to ask, is there a thing that's brought you unexpected joy recently? Something you might not have predicted, something that's brought you such joy?
Actually, as I look towards this, there is something which is really ADHD, but it has brought me a lot of joy, which is this, which is a pencil case,
Oh,
basically, right? And I love stationery, right?
look at that.
But this is it's what they call a utility pouch, because I'm so
Can you
utilitarian.
wear it?
No,
Well,
you probably could
like a
accept.
utility belt for writers.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, like
Yeah, I've got everything in here. I'll shove my laptop in as well. But I wanted one of these for ages, right? There's a Japanese brand who make them, and this is
yeah.
just this is a very ADHD story. So I wanted one for ages, and I really wanted it in this color green because I love this color. But then they seemed to be A, sold out everywhere, and B, it seemed like maybe they weren't making the green ones anymore. So I was like, I have a sewing machine. This isn't a problem, right? So I find a tutorial on YouTube. I cut out the pieces, right? And I'm like, okay, this is great. I'm going to do this. Then I find one in my second favorite color, which is yellow, which is like, this is, the one that they sell. This is the real one, right?
Oh, well,
So
yeah,
I buy this because it's like his pockets, it's
amazing.
glorious and I love it. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, I'd already cut out the pieces for this. This was my work in progress. And it was just that thing of going instant gratification. I'm going to buy this one, and then I was like, yeah, but you like this color. Plus, it's sitting there. So I finished it, and now I have two.
You
So
made that, Gail.
yes, and you can. I was going to say you can't attach it to anything because I made a slight mistake, and there's only a loop on one side. However, it is perfectly imperfect, and I love it.
It's beautiful. I love the pink
Yeah,
zip
pink
as
zip,
well.
because it was again the only zip I had in the house that was the right size. Use what you
Gorgeous,
have.
gorgeous,
Use what
gorgeous.
you have while making a thing that you don't actually need because you have another one. But it brought me a lot
Brought
of
you
joy
joy,
to
yeah.
make it, to finish it, to think there isn't another one like this. It's not perfect, but it's perfectly imperfect.
Yeah, love it.
Um, so
Love it.
like it's an example of, yeah, just do it. Kind of just
Yeah.
do it anyway, and then you'll
Yeah.
have two pencil cases
I
that are
love it.
huge.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It looks so beautifully made. And you're clearly a multi-hyphenate creative with your machine skills and your writing, and yeah, it's
But
great. It's great.
when you make
Expressing
things
ourselves.
like, and this is why I'm going to try and be, a bit more analog in 2026. I'm going to try and make more things because
Hmm.
there's a connection between your brain and your hands. When you are using your hands to
Yes,
make something, like it fires the neurons differently. And when you're
absolutely.
handwriting, it's different. And journaling is good for us as long as you're not getting into rumination. So, making
Yeah.
things, having things in your hand. This is also this is my reading pouch as well. So it's got my Kindle in here, and
Oh,
I'm trying to read more. So like
yeah,
all
yeah,
of this is actually really nurturing
yeah, yeah,
and nourishing. And I think that's what we have to remember is that we don't have the same capacity as everybody else.
yeah.
So use your capacity on things that bring you joy.
Absolutely. Yeah, joy above all else. Joy first.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely joy first before everything else. And also, one of the things that I wanted to share about is the fact that you are now starting, for those people that are maybe wondering how they can work with you, and I've signed up and I'm very excited,
Yay.
is that you are set up Write Club.
Right Club. Yes. The first rule of Right Club is we don't talk during Right Club.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Do you
So
want to just tell people about it and how they can join?
So I'm going to be launching it properly in January.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I'm going to do 3 sessions between now and Christmas, which is 3 co-writing sessions every Wednesday, 1 p.m. UK time for an hour. The room will probably be open for a few minutes beforehand, and it'll probably be open for a little bit afterwards. But the idea is for that 1 hour,
Yeah.
you come in, you show up with whatever you want. I don't care if you're writing your Christmas cards, but just come and get used to the idea of spending an hour a week minimum writing for yourself,
Amazing.
whatever it is that brings you joy. Um, and you'll see some friendly faces there.
Yeah.
Get an hour of work done. That's a springboard into other things, but just get your hour done. Um, Once we get to January, there'll also be a planning session on a shorter planning session on a Sunday night as well for people who like to go,
Is it?
okay. Because one of the things I think is we don't prioritize our writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you spend half an hour on a Sunday going, oh, I'm going to write 5,000 words this week. And then you go, oh, but there's a doctor's appointment. There's,
Yeah.
school assembly, blah, blah, blah. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
let's kind of match my capacity, my
Yeah.
time with what I have. So it's gently allowing
I
yourself to
love that.
find the pockets of
Yeah.
time. Um,
Yeah.
and also not tearing into the week and then going, oh God, all the time I thought I had is
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to do 3 sessions in December. The link is on my website, which is www.bookdoubling.com, because what I do is basically body doubling people while they're writing their books.
Yeah.
Um,
Such a great name, Book Dublin. And it
um,
starts tomorrow, right? On the 3rd of
Starts
December.
tomorrow on the 3rd. It'll be the 3rd, the 10th, and the 17th, those 3 sessions.
Brilliant.
So yes, come and join. I'm looking forward to seeing all your faces tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't wait. And so that's your website. What's your Substack and your Instagram? Is it Book Doubling as well?
My Substack is Whizzy Brain
Whizzy
because
Brain.
we all get
Brilliant.
that.
Love it.
But
Yeah.
TikTok and Instagram are book doubling.
Brilliant. Amazing. Well, thank you, Gail. Like it's like literally we've gone way over what I thought, but we could, and I'm sure we will do it again if you'd like to come on.
I'd love to.
I'd love to talk to you.
It's
I
always a pleasure to talk to
can't
you.
wait for tomorrow. I'm actually I want to work on some fiction, something that I
Ooh.
really want to kind of not be doing. I've decided I'm going to use that time to kind of, because I don't really give a lot of space for that.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited. So you'll see me grinning away, and yeah, can't wait. And thank you for your
Excellent.
time. It's just been so amazing to talk
Thank
to you
you.
as always. All right,
Can't
take
wait to
care,
see you tomorrow.
Gail. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.